Personal story segment tonight. Some believe that Dr. Kermit Gosnell is the worst serial killer in American history. Yet few Americans know who he is or what he did. New book called Gosnell, The Untold Story of America's Most Prolific Serial Killer, comes out today and details the abortion doctor's grisly crimes in Philadelphia, for which he's serving life in prison. How authorities caught Gosnell is an amazing story in itself. Joining us from Philadelphia, Jim Wood, detective who worked the Gosnell case. He's in shadow to protect his identity as he does undercover work. So, detective, how did you get on to Gosnell? He was simply an abortion doctor, right?
No, he was also a prolific pill mill, prescription pill seller. Supposed to be legal, however, he was putting on the street thousands of prescription pills that were abused by people every day.
So you got in on a drug beef, and you found him doing what?
We found him through the use of informants prescribing an enormous amount of prescription pills that were hitting the streets. And with the interview of one of Gosnell's secretaries at the office, we found additional disturbing evidence, which we followed up the investigation with. One of them being the death of Kermit Mongar, who was a patient of Dr. Gosnell's. Ultimately, we executed search warrants at the office, which, after interviews of the workers at the location and the fetuses that were recovered from the freezer of his office, revealed disturbing sights that I have never seen in my life before. Once the fetuses were exposed, you could see that their necks had been cut. The baby's necks had been cut. There was so many other disturbing evidence within the clinic.
Now, were some of these babies actually born alive and he killed them?
Yes, sir. Several of the babies were born alive, which he was ultimately charged with their deaths.
So he was doing late-term abortions. In Pennsylvania law is no abortion after 24 weeks. He, I understand, made more than $1 million a year, catering to mostly poor women who were desperate. They came in. He didn't care what the term was, and if he had to birth the baby and kill the baby, he would do that. And you found baby body parts, you found blood all over the place, and then his own people turned against him and testified against him. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Is there an estimate of how many babies that he destroyed?
At this point, Bill, he was performing abortions for a very long time. I would estimate there have to be in the thousands that he killed without any regards for how he did it.
That's right.
Very disturbing.
All right. And it wasn't even a tough case to prosecute. The guy was found guilty on all kinds of stuff. Detective, we appreciate your good work. Thanks very much. Let's turn now to Ann McElhaney, who's a co-author of the book about Dr. Gosnell. So this story pretty much underplayed by the media. I think if it's true that he killed thousands of babies, many of whom were actually birthed, meaning, and he executed them. And the media doesn't really have an appetite for the story.
Well, the media should have an appetite. This is exactly the kind of story, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. They didn't like what this story tells you about abortion. They didn't like what it tells you about the law in America, that, you know, if these babies had been a couple of inches in a different direction, if they'd been in the womb, it would be perfectly fine.
In some states, but not in all states.
Well,
not in Pennsylvania.
Not in Pennsylvania. 24 weeks, though, in Pennsylvania. It's a lot. For your listeners, you know, 6 months.
Now, you wrote this book. Did you write it because you're a pro-life person, or did you write it because you were uncovering a grisly crime?
I'm a journalist, and I like the idea of journalism being the voice for the voiceless. And if you can find a more voiceless person than Kermit Mongar, than Samika Shaw, than the babies who he slaughtered, I welcome it. But, you know, this is exactly what journalism is supposed to be about. It's a privilege to be the person who gets to speak for these. Everyone in the country knows who Michael Brown is. We all know that name. We know who Trayvon Martin is. No one knows who Samika Shaw is.
That's for sure.
Samika Shaw, 22-year-old black woman, she's dead and no one cares about it. That's why this book was written.
Yeah, and she was killed in a botched abortion.
Correct.
Ms. Shaw. Now, you actually interviewed Gosnell. He's a monster. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. He's like central casting. It's an extraordinary thing. He sang to me in French.
So he has no remorse about killing all of these babies.
Listen to me, Bill. You know what it's like? Meeting him, it's like he's just played 18 holes of golf and he's come in and he's having a gin and tonic. He smiles all the time. He talks about his big feet. He talks about his hands. And you're looking at his hands thinking, I know what those hands did. He has an extraordinary affect.
Did you ask him why he didn't feel remorse about all these dead babies?
He did nothing wrong.
No?
He did nothing wrong. He's helping the poor women of Pennsylvania. He's providing a service. He's delighted with himself. He thinks he's going to get out. He's going to run a triathlon. He's extraordinary. You know what's disappointing to him, Bill? It's really disappointing he didn't get into the poetry class. This is the kind of stuff that we have in the book. In prison.
Yeah.
He went to Auschwitz. He tells us he went to Auschwitz. You know the word he used to describe Auschwitz? And if you ever find anyone in your life to ever describe Auschwitz like this, I challenge you. Impressive. He called it impressive.
Well,
That's
he's a
who he
monster. Now, you've made a movie off your book.
That's right.
All right? And Kane, right? Dean Cain.
Dean Cain is the lead.
Superman?
Yeah.
He's lead. But you're having trouble getting a movie company to distribute the film.
That's right. We've
Why?
been to all the big ones, and lots of them have said, great movie. My God, this is an extraordinary story. Not for us. Too controversial. These are the same people, by the way, who released a road trip movie with Lily Tomlin collecting money for her granddaughter's abortion, and also the same people who did a rom-com on abortion.
So it's a political thing.
It's a political thing.
But
they
the
don't
movie
like what
is
the story
done
says.
already,
The
right?
movie is done,
you got the financing and
we just need to get it out there independently.
So they like the movie, but it's too controversial and they want to distribute it. The book that you have, are you able to book yourself on programs? Are they, like I'm talking to you now, is it hard for you to get publicity?
Isn't that amazing? I'm not on The View, you know? Shocker there, Bill, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's a real sense. I mean, we're very privileged to be on your show, and we know that you were great on this story. But a lot of people weren't. People don't want this truth out. People don't want to face the reality that you could have an abortion in America at 40 weeks, at 9 months. Who knows that? You can only compare the law in America to the laws in Pakistan and China. Europe don't have this. The socialists wouldn't do this. And I think that that's something that is, it's something unique about this story and about the trial. You know, in the trial, one of the most dramatic parts of the trial is that you have an abortion doctor on the stand, I think it's a first, describing what a good abortion looks like. And I can tell you the jury were shocked.
Well, he'll never see the light of day again, and that's good, Ann. And the book again is Gosnell, The Untold Story of America's Most Prolific Serial Killer.